Hello and welcome to the African Tech Roundup. This is episode 10. Now, every Monday we round up the week's most important technology, digital, and innovation news from across the African continent. My name is Andile Masugu. I'm a broadcaster and entrepreneur. And joining me on the show is my co-host, tech entrepreneur, and executive editor of iAfrican.com, Tefo Mogape. How's it, guy?
I'm good, dude. Good episode 9 last week with you and Lyndon Munetti.
Absolutely, man. We go back quite a while, and what we didn't say on the podcast, or what I didn't share on the podcast, is that Lyndon's actually married to a Kenyan and has actually lived in Kenya for 14 years, so kind of knew what he was talking about.
It was brilliant because that was lots of Kenyan stories last week.
This week, I've been rubbing shoulders with some of Africa's corporate elite. You know, I'm not one to name drop much. The reason I mention it is because there's an interview that will be dropping Wednesday this week.
You interviewed Teto Nyati, CEO of MTN Group.
Yeah, we're taking it right to the top.
Listen up on Wednesday, African Tech Conversations.
We're really excited for you to hear that. And of course, Thursday, Oresti Patricios will be speaking at an iAfrican event, and I got the opportunity to interview him. His interview will be dropping the following week. There'll be more about him and that event in our sponsor feature. Now, if you're listening in for the first time, you might want to catch up on our past episodes by heading straight to africantechroundup.com. Our Twitter handle is @AfricanRoundup. We'd love you to follow us and tell us what you think of the show. And in our discussion segment, you can look forward to us trying to figure out if the fact that two major VC interests in as many weeks have aggressively curbed their investments in startups on the continent. Is this something to be worried about? We'll talk about it in some detail. But first, this week's African Tech Roundup is supported by Starting Up in Africa, a talk and fireside chat with Oresti Patricios of Onico Group, along with Mike Ronsky, whose company Fuseware was recently acquired by Onico Group. It's all happening courtesy of iAfrican.com on Thursday, the 25th of June at Ogilvy in Mather, Johannesburg, from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Come through and listen to Oresti speak about how he started Onico Group and managed to grow and scale it across Africa. He'll also be sharing insights into brands, media, advertising research on the continent. And so for more information and to book your seat, head to www.iafrican.com/events. Now remember, if you'd like your audio comments included in a future episode of the African Tech Roundup, drop us a line on Twitter using the hashtag #ATRUcomment, and our team will make contact with you as soon as. Right, on to the news we go. Oh, shucks. It's official. South Africa and Uganda have both officially missed the International Telecommunication Union, ITU's deadline, switch from analog to digital terrestrial television. My goodness, what does this mean, Tefo?
Well, I wouldn't be too disappointed, although many people are complaining and taking the communications department on about this, because there's a whole list of countries, not just in Africa, that have missed their deadlines. But what this means is that we still have a few more months, if not a year, of analog TV, because what the migration meant was that every household would have to purchase a set-top box, so similar to your decoders, or you could use a decoder if MultiChoice and the likes allowed public TV, and this allowed you to watch digital television.
Well, I mean, like you say, South Africa is not alone. Countries like Armenia, Bangladesh, Belize, lots of African countries on this list, though. Central African Republic, Egypt, Eritrea, Jamaica's on the list, Lebanon, Liberia, Libya, Moldova, Morocco, all these people not meeting these guidelines. I wonder what it means in terms of sanctions from that body.
Well, it doesn't mean much sanctions, but I think it's more from a content point of view and from taking advantage of digital terrestrial television. So that's the disadvantage we'll suffer in the meantime.
To our next story, which is arguably the biggest tech news story of the week, which involves Mark Shuttleworth losing a busload of money. What happened here?
Yeah, he went to the Constitutional Court regarding his exit levy case, which is, I think it's a levy if you want to take money out of the country. You levy, I think it's something about 10% of those funds, which you have to pay to the South African Revenue Services. He was arguing against that case. He took it to the Constitutional Court and he lost 250 million.
The South African Reserve Bank basically argued that it should not repay Shuttleworth the money. An exit levy it charged him when he transferred his assets out of South Africa to the Isle of Man in 2009. He's been hanging on to this. I think I remember a quote from a while ago, him saying it's not even about the money, it's money he could afford to lose, but I think he was fighting in principle. Big loss to make for the sake of principle.
Well, look, this is approximately $25 million. In anyone's book, this is a lot of money. So, yeah, he might say it wasn't about the money, which is probably true. It's paving the way for everybody else who'd want to move their assets and money overseas. But I think $25 million is a big hole to burn into your pocket.
To Kenya now, where an ambitious cable car project is being pitched to solve Nairobi's traffic problem. It's interesting. This is quite a large problem to try and solve and a lot of money to go with it. This project is worth an estimated $600 million US. It would be an investment plan that these parties are hoping would be operational in the next year or two. They're hoping this will mean an end to Nairobi's famously notorious traffic jams.
This is a common pan-African problem. Big cities with traffic congestions has a history of two things mainly. Colonizers didn't anticipate the natives developing and having cars, so the roads weren't built to accommodate them. But also when the natives, our governments took over from independence, there was a lot of mismanagement and not proper planning. So we have all these congestions in cities like Joburg, Lagos and Nairobi.
What's novel though about this public-private partnership is that this particular plan does not require public funds. Trappers Africa, of course, the consultants on this partnership are basically saying all we need is government approval, and so far City Hall in Nairobi has basically given its approval. The plan is currently awaiting scrutiny by Treasury and Cabinet. Quite interesting that absolutely no money being required from government for this to take place.
Wow, which makes me question how these guys are going to make money, but we'll see.
Probably done their numbers, which is why governments want to take a second look at this and probably think, hey, maybe we should have some of our country's money invested in this.
Or take a cut of it through a levy or something.
So here's to hoping that does go through. The other thing about this is that this is a typical of how business is done in Africa, especially not just business on the sort of scale that we just described in a huge sort of infrastructural development scale. One thinks of Uber, also from Kenya. I do not imagine for a second that they went through these type of processes to try and onboard government support, to get the buy-in of government. Obviously, infrastructure being a different kettle of fish. But yeah, one wonders what sort of process a company like Uber followed in order to launch in Kenya, and maybe not following the processes Africa is more accustomed to get a business off the ground might be the cause of some of the issues right now.
Maybe, but I like their style of activating in every city. They're very gung-ho and lean startup about it. They have one person who activates every city and gains momentum in each city.
I suppose it remains to be seen whether the Kenyan vote in that regard will swing their way. Some interesting news out of South Africa now, with the country totally embracing the global 3D printing craze. A low-cost prosthetic hand has been designed in Cape Town and printed in the rather sleepy town of Bloemfontein. No offense, Bloemfontein, but that's not exactly the town we think of when we think of cutting-edge innovation.
Come on. I was born in Bloemfontein. Don't knock my hometown.
Oops, my bad.
Yeah, but this is quite a good innovation. Award-winning academic and mechanical engineer Dr. George Vikatos and his master student at the University of Cape Town, Severin Tenem, I hope I pronounced that correctly, designed this hand and sent it out for manufacturing.
And apparently they're holding out for a patent, that application that they've already filed. I think they sense that there's a lot of commercial value to their product. Apparently it comes in way cheaper than anything that's currently out there, but works just as well. I certainly hope they get that patent and put South Africa on the map.
I hope they don't get the patent. I mean, again, I'm an open source kind of guy, so I hope they work with the government and other institutions, put the designs up openly for everybody to use, and the rest of the continent can also benefit.
Well, you're bringing a debate we've had, or rehashing it. We had a debate. In case you're joining us for the first time, you might have missed the debate we had over open source software versus proprietary. And I'm of the mind, one, if you have the ingenuity to create a value and protect it, I think it's only fair that you should be able to profit from it. At the same time, I feel that that's basically my gauge of whether it deserves my vote or not just because it's free or non-proprietary.
True, but I'd say again, maybe we need a filter of some sort, like something in public interest like health and 3D printed hands should be in some way open source.
Well, then we might just disincentivize people's inventions and they might just decide to, I don't know, pave roads instead.
I get you, but yeah.
Well, yeah, so, this we can argue this thing up and down, moving swiftly along. And finally, Spark is the second seed fund firm in as many weeks to make an unsettling announcement.
Spark was co-founded by Jason Njoku and Bastian Gotter, and they say that they're pulling the plug on 4 startups they invested in and that they're practically dead businesses.
So last week, we get 88 miles per hour, very flamboyant African seed fund announcing that they wouldn't be investing in African startups. And they were specific about that, African startups, almost to imply that they might invest in other countries or regions or continents. We don't have confirmation to that effect. They've said the 36 startups they've invested in, that's it. Just seems strange to me that these announcements seem to come very close together. It's almost like Spark got a sense of courage to make this announcement from the previous week.
Yeah, I think riding on the wave and feeling... Actually, Jason Njoku announces in a blog post in response to the 88 mph announcement. So I think he's just felt it probably is a little bit easier since somebody tested the water and he could just ride on the back of that and announce that they're pulling the plug. Probably they'd done it already. Maybe they were about to do it, but timing is everything. So he probably felt that this is the right time. On the note of venture capital funds or investors stopping investing or pausing to invest, I don't think it's uncommon, but it's very uncommon to announce it. If you take big investment houses or big merchant banks, I'm certain that there are periods during the financial years where they exhaust all their investment funds and don't invest until the next financial year. But they don't publicly go out and announce that because it's the order of business. In this case, I get a feeling that it's not necessarily a break. It's probably they're stopping. This is the end.
In the case of Spark this week, in a heartbreaking move, they list 4 startups: bus.com.ng, insured.ng, giddymint.com.ng, and Christians, and call them failed businesses. This must be a horrible, horrible week for these startups.
I thought that announcement was a bit harsh. I mean, this is coming from me. I've worked with startups. I am a startup at the moment. And saying they failed businesses, and in the same post going on to say, we're not necessarily saying they're dead and they won't go ahead, is like slapping and then comforting them afterwards. It's a bit harsh to say they failed businesses. Probably should have just announced that, yeah, we've stopped 4 companies and not mention names. I don't know. I'm not an investor. I don't have that money.
They have at least told us why. And basically, they're not prepared to invest in these companies any longer. Each of these companies have failed to go past the $250,000 benchmark, and they just had to let go. And I'm sure it's not an encouraging sign to anybody who's in a pre-revenue state right now thinking, maybe I was going to approach Spark. They're going to think twice now.
Yeah, this brings us to our discussion topic of what's happening in the tech startup investment scene in Africa, with these 2 announcing breaks or stops or pulling out of investing in startups. And for me, it becomes a question of comparing this to Silicon Valley or other ecosystems. Beyond the money that these funds are pumping into these companies, what other value are they bringing? Do they have a methodology in place or process where they take these startups from point when they came in, when they invested in them, to giving a timeline saying in 18 months, these are the targets every week, every month, this is a process that we go through? Or is it just a matter of we give you the money, we meet with you occasionally, we might introduce you to some people to make deals, and that's it?
So I had the chance to catch up with 2 startup founders who are currently renting some space over at Josie Hub, and then I basically asked them what they make of the news that's come out over the last 2 weeks, what they feel their prospects are in terms of venture capital and seeking it out. Both firms, of course, are pre-revenue, but I asked them to sort of give us their take on what they'd be looking for in a venture capital firm in terms of funding and other things, and also their take on the mood given the announcements. Here we go.
My name is Tawanda Makunike. I'm from BSoft, the data analytics company. We develop products to help gather data for business intelligence. We're currently developing eButler, a personal shopping website to help people do their groceries on mobile and on web.
Cool. Hi, my name is Nzalo. I run a company called Oya, which is a mobile application that connects people with events in and around their location. It's currently available on iOS and it's our first month. Hearing the news, it was just a huge blow up for our startups, especially us being in pre-revenue, where we looking at starting to get investment from outside to help accelerate our business. So it becomes a huge challenge if the big guys are saying, no, we're closing doors and we're not funding startups anymore.
Yeah, it's it's very scary. It kind of gives us a view that, you know, things are going to be tough where we're going. But then we have to be strong. You know, I suppose funding is going to be a challenge in any case going forward. But it's quite scary because now our vision is to raise fund for expansion. I mean, venture capital is our source. So it's quite scary when you hear such things happening, because these are the guys we look to for funding.
The problem with most government institutions is they're not sometimes tailored for tech startups. Also becoming more harder and harder to find funding. So, but for me, it's maybe continuing a road of looking at angel investors and see if I can pick up a couple of wealthy business people and show the viability and how the company is going to be profitable with the help of their investment.
Our strategies going forward has been to build up a consultancy division in our company where we fund our project via doing client jobs. But then it can only help us to a certain extent. When you want to get into a market where the retail sector is fast growing, it's fast moving, you need more money to get more resources. So VCs were only what we're looking at, but with such news, it becomes an option that's really less likely to be like on top of the list. Doing consultancy within the company and going to angel investors.
For me, mostly it's human capital, because I believe money is controlled by people. So no matter how the amount of money they can give it to you, if you don't know where you're gonna start using it, it becomes more challenging. So for me, besides money, it's looking for industry aspect, people who have walked this road, people who have invested in companies before, especially in the field that I am.
It's, I think experience in terms of building companies is really, really important for us. We do not want to be just a fly-by type of company. We want to be around for the long term. So I think VC, what we would really appreciate is someone who's going to help us lay a solid foundation for a company. Someone who's going to help us with open certain doors that will probably not be available to us. But guidance in terms of building a company is what we really are looking for.
And final question, I want you to try, if you can, put yourselves in the shoes of some of these companies that were named this week as failed businesses. Tell me what you would do next if this announcement had been about you and your company.
For them is to just go back to the drawing board and see what went wrong, or also try to understand if whatever they were trying to do, was it solving a problem that their clients were willing to pay for, or they were just solving something which it didn't need it to be solved. It's just a learning curve to them, having worked with those people, even if their business didn't kick off, but I'm sure they've learned a lot. So it's just using whatever they learn, feedback they got, sit down, see if they can refine their product. If they're not, then they continue the journey until they solve a real existing problem that people are willing to pay for that solution.
Yeah, one thing in common that all startups have, I think our middle name is pivot. If things go to the west, then pivot. I think there's no need to be discouraged. It's part of a startup's life cycle. You know, there are those downs, but I think going back to the drawing board, like what Nzalo said, is the best way forward. Rethink your strategy, and having been in contact with such a big VC, I think they've learned a lot that they can utilize going forward.
I have a pretty unscientific view to all this. I have a feeling that venture capitalism in the context of Africa and investing in African startups has been a cut and paste situation where wealthy, successful individuals with spare cash just think because the African markets are so primitive, all they need to do is basically just toss money into a market and it'll work for them. And I have a feeling that true venture capitalism involves the art and science of actually being able to cultivate and enrich and incubate and do all those things that money can't do just on its own.
I feel that you need to have a program in place, have a methodology of some sort or a process. And it's more than just money. A lot of people have money and they can throw money, but a startup or startup founder comes to an investor not just looking for money, but looking for that extra knowledge, that experience, that show me the way around, what should I be looking out for, etc.
Yeah, and you think of programs like Y Combinator of the US, and I mean they're just legendary at basically bringing startup founders through a process that allows them to basically prepare for success if it's going to happen, but also just face up to failure quite quickly as well, if that's what was bound to happen as well.
Yeah, and talking of Y Combinator, they've recently filed in the US to raise a fund, a venture capital fund. So they're not just going to be an accelerator, they're also going to invest heavily and fund startups as well, which talks to their methodology, which has been very successful.
I do think this does come down to the fact that venture capitalism is much more a science than some wealthy individuals with a lot of money willing to toss it around seem to think. And I do think on some level these announcements are worrying in that regard, because it gives me the sense that they're coming from a place that doesn't quite acknowledge that fact.
I don't know how they operate, each of them, and I can't speak to that. But yeah, I agree with you. I think they come from a place where all the blame is being placed on the startups and the startup founders, saying, you didn't reach this 250,000 revenue benchmark. You startups haven't made us money. Therefore, you as startups are bad. But the other side we're not hearing, and the startups haven't spoken, I don't think they're allowed to given their contract, is what have the funds done to help the startups.
To be fair, to sort of be in the corner with these VCs, perhaps the problem is also in the mindset of what we've all come to expect as an ecosystem from what venture capital delivers, in the sense that it might also be erroneous to assume that because your firm has successfully attracted an investment, it will succeed.
Well, that's a bias, and that's an assumption that probably most startup founders make. It's not as you still have to do the work. This is not given that because you attracted funding, you're going to make money. Lots of companies have failed, having attracted millions of dollars of funding. So yeah, it's still a science.
And of course, the companies that were listed, all four of them could very well carry on to do really great things and just prove our point in that success isn't all about the money. It's hard to see them doing that though, given how enthusiasm often sides with the people who are able to acquire the hype of being invested in and now being dumped. I don't know what that does for you, but hey, listen, we want to know what you think. If you're a startup founder, you probably have very strong opinions about this. Perhaps listening to this makes you reconsider your calling in some way or another. We'd love to hear from you if that's the case. Perhaps in some regards it might strengthen your resolve. In many ways, failure is probably not new to you if you're in the startup game to begin with, and perhaps it just comes with the territory. I would also like to hear from you if you are a venture capitalist thinking to dabble, and perhaps listening to this podcast has made you realize, hang on a minute, successfully investing in a tech startup requires a little more than just throwing money at it. I don't know. We'd really just like to hear your views, as diverse as they come. Please feel free to drop us a comment. Our Twitter handle is @AfricanRoundup. Feel free to use the hashtag ATRU. And of course, if you'd like to make a direct audio comment for our next episode, please tweet us using the hashtag ATRU comment, and our team will be on you like white on rice. In the meantime, though, remember that this week's African Tech Roundup is supported by Starting Up in Africa, a talk and fireside chat with Oresti Patricios and Mike Ronsky of Ornico Group. It's happening at Ogilvy and Mather, Johannesburg, South Africa on Thursday, the 25th of June from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. For more information and to book your seat, head to www.iafrican.com/events. And this event, of course, is proudly hosted by iafrican.com. Otherwise, that's it for now. Until next week, it's cheers from me, Andile Masugu.
And me, Tefo Mohapi.
Take it easy, everybody.